Hello everyone, so for today we're going to learn about the 6 trigonometric functions, also known as the circular functions. Our lesson objectives would be to determine the 6 trigonometric functions, also known as circular functions, associated with the coordinates x, y, and identify the 6 trigonometric functions associated with the quadrantal angles. First, we recall the unit circle having a radius of 1 and center at the origin. Magnifying this to have this. Ayan, so our circle is like this. In center radius form, we have this equation of a circle. But since our center is at the origin, so let's say here, our HK is 0, 0, so we can have this as 0, and this also as a 0. And then the radius of the unit circle is 1 unit, so we can replace our r with 1. We can actually simplify this equation as x squared plus y squared equals 1, which is this. Okay, so we have this unit circle. We can consider a point, a very important point on the unit circle, say this one. Let's have a laser pointer to point that. This one. What is this point? Yan, located on the positive x-axis, and at the same time, it's part of the unit circle. It's on the unit circle. That is the point 1, 0. Okay? So 1, 0, and then we have this line segment connecting the origin and that point. Okay? We call this the initial arm. Okay? Now, let's consider a traveling point that starts from this point, 1, 0. Nagta-travel siya. Say an ant that travels from 1, 0, and then it moves along the unit circle along this path. Yan. So, nag-move siya along this path. Yan. Pwede rin bumalik dun sa position na to, and then pabalik ulit. So, ayun. It can go several times around the unit circle. Okay. So, it can end anywhere on the unit circle. Actually, pwede pang pabalik yung kanyang pa-clockwise yung kanyang direction. Pero again, ang kanyang starting position or starting spot is at the point 1, 0. And it can move on this direction. And again, along the path of the unit circle. It can still go back to the point 1, 0. Okay? And then, suppose that point ends here. Say, it traveled from here and then it traced this path and ended there. Okay? We will have an associated theta. And that theta is the angle made by this initial arm and this terminal arm. I have introduced to you the initial arm a while ago. And what is this terminal arm? The terminal arm is the segment, the line segment, from the origin or the center of the circle to the terminal point. Okay? Sabi natin, we have a traveling point. Initially, it's here. Tapos, it terminated there. So, we have this terminal point. We can assign xy to that. Okay? And for that xy, for that ordered pair, ayan, dun mag-i-emerge ang ating trigonometric function. So, that is to say also, for every theta, there's an associated point xy. Okay? So, yung xy na yan yung, di ba, how do we identify the ordered pair? Yan. So, ang xy natin, di ba, it's, the x is the distance of this point from the y-axis. So, it's this distance here. Sorry. Let's erase that part. Let's get an eraser. Let's erase this. Okay. Yan, so ang ating x is denoted by this distance, which is also equal to this distance. And then the y is the distance of the same point, from the x-axis. So this is the y value, okay? So for every theta, there's an associated xy. So we say P of theta is equal to xy. So the point associated with theta is equal to xy, where x is equal to the cosine theta and y is equal to the sine theta. Yan, so that is where x and y as cosine theta and sine theta originated. Okay, parang yan yung alamat ng cosine theta and sine theta. Okay, so don't interchange the two values because x and y, as you know, the ordered pair is not interchangeable. As you know, 1, 2 is different from 2, 1 on our coordinate system. Same as 1, 0, this is different from 0, 1. Okay, so this point, wherein we are considering as our initial point, that means our theta is 0 degrees. Okay? So if we travel on the counterclockwise direction, we're considering positive thetas. So here we have 90 degrees. Yan. So it is associated with the right angle here. If we have a right angle. And in fact, we have a right angle for every quadrant, or we are forming a 90-degree angle for every quadrant. So from here to the next part, this one, we have plus 90 degrees. So this one is 180 degrees. Again, we are measuring it from this point here. Yan. And then to there. Okay, so 180 degrees, that's half of the circle. As we move our point from here to here, again, ang distance na na-travel niya na from 0 degrees, bali 270 degrees yung magiging theta. Yan, so 270 degrees. Going back to this position, it traveled 360 degrees for its theta. Okay, so yun yung ating mga angle in degrees. We can also have 90 degrees in terms of the pi radians. So this will become pi over 2. By the way, this 0 degrees will still be 0, but in terms of pi radians, we don't need to include the degree symbol or degree notation anymore. This 180 degrees will be equal to pi, or pi radians, and the 270 degrees is equal to 3 pi over 2. Yeah, later we will realize that we will have here 0 equal to 360 degrees. We can add 90 degrees more to have this 190 degrees coinciding with 450 degrees. Okay. Tapos the 180 degrees will coincide with 540 degrees, etc., etc. Okay. So as you know, in trigonometry, we can have an angle greater than 360 degrees. It's possible to have a theta greater than 360 degrees in trigonometry. So what are the 6 circular functions associated with xy, or the ordered pair xy? So we have met already cosine theta equal to x, sine theta equal to y. Okay. Another lead character is the tan theta, which is equal to the ratio of y and x. So that this is y over x. Okay. And then the reciprocal of that will be cotangent theta, which is equal to x over y. Okay. And then the reciprocal of cosine, which is secant theta, will be equal to 1 over x. And the reciprocal of sine theta, which we will now introduce as the cosecant theta, is 1 over y. Okay? So, ayan po yung ating mga 6 trigonometric functions. Okay? So, I want you to familiarize yourselves with this because we will encounter these functions until we end with the trigo discussions. Now, how do we express the 4 other trigo functions, the tan theta, cotangent theta, secant theta, and cosecant theta in terms of sine and cosine? Okay, let's start with tan theta. As you know, y is equal to sine theta, and x is equal to cosine theta. So that means numerator is sine theta, denominator is cosine theta. So tan theta is sine theta over cosine theta. Okay. And then for the cotangent theta, since this is just the reciprocal of this one, that means this should give us cosine theta over sine theta. Numerator this time is the cosine function. Okay. And then for the secant theta, this is equal to just the reciprocal of cosine. So this will be equal to 1 over cosine theta. Okay. Let's formally write this as equal, equal, equal. Okay. And then finally for cosecant theta, being the reciprocal of the y function, which is the sine theta, this will be equal to 1 over sine theta. Take note that this is not a multiplication operation because some students have a misconception that you are multiplying cosine by theta. At a trigonometric function, whether cosine, sine, tangent, cotangent, secant, or cosecant, they have no value without this angle. Okay, so this trigo function should always have an angle for it to have a singular value or a single value. Okay, so package po sila, they are inseparable. Okay, so hindi yan cosine times theta, hindi rin to sine over theta o sine times theta. Yan. Pero this one, you're dividing the two. Okay, so you only actually have two values involved here, cosine, cosine theta, and sine theta. Here you have sine theta and cosine theta. Okay, that's why you cannot cancel the thetas. That's a misconception. So that would be wrong. So yan. To make it official, let's erase that. Just to confirm that that is really not true. Okay. Now, what are the trigonometric functions of positive quadrantal angles? So we have mentioned the quadrantal angles a while ago. The 0 degree here, the 90 degree, let's use a high laser pointer for that. We have here the 0 degree, the 90 degree angle, 180 degrees, and 270, and then go back to 360 or 0 degrees. Okay. So we have the initial point 10, okay, at 0 degrees. So that means this one represents the cosine theta, and the 0 here represents the sine 0 degrees. So cosine 0, sine 0, respectively, itong dalawang to. Okay? Then we go to the next quadrantal point. Next point is 0, 1. Okay? By the way, these are called quadrantal angles, the 0 degrees, and the, what is our angle here? Angle here is 90 degrees. Okay, so the 0 here is, that's the x-coordinate, so cosine of 90 degrees. Okay, and the 1 here is y-coordinate, kaya sine. This is sine of 90 degrees. Remember, x is associated with cosine and the y is associated with the sine function. Okay, so again, yung 0 degrees tsaka 90 degrees, they are called quadrantal angles because the terminal side, at least one of its terminal sides, yan, coincides with the x or the y axis. Okay? So ayun po. And then let's go to the next quadrantal angle, which is 180 degrees. So we have the point here, negative 1, 0. Okay? Diba? Yung mga points natin sa x-axis, 0 yung y-coordinates nila. So yung negative 1, this is the x, kaya associated yan with the cosine of 180. Okay? And 0, y-coordinate yan, kaya associated siya with the sine ng 180. Okay? So, ayun po. Isa lang na value ang nire-represent ng cosine 180, and that's negative 1. Sine of 180 is 0. Okay? And then, let's go to the next quadrantal angle. See, 270 degrees here. Okay? What is this ordered pair? Okay, so you answered 0, negative 1. That is correct. So, 0, negative 1. 0 is the x value, and that represents the cosine 270. And the negative 1 is the y value. That's the sine of 270. All in degrees. Okay? So, naka-degrees tayo. But again, we can consider them in pi radians. This will be cosine 0, sine 0. This is cosine pi over 2, sine pi over 2. Remember, our pi is 180. Okay? So, this is cosine of pi, sine of pi. Okay? Cosine of 3 pi over 2, sine of 3 pi over 2. Okay? Question, do we have to memorize this? Okay? Yes, but as you actually make use of them several times, you'll get yourselves more and more familiar with them, that memorizing them become very natural for us. Okay? So let us now identify the tangent theta now that we have found the sine and cosine value for this quadrantal angle. So let's start with this one. Okay, let's identify that using our pen. This is the point 10. Okay, so 1 is the cosine and 0 is the sine value. So we have 1 and 0 here. Okay. Tapos, our tangent is coming from sine over cosine. So, 0 divided by 1 is 0. Okay. Now, for 90 degrees, we have this point, which is 0, 1. So, for here, your cosine is 0. And your sine function or sine theta is 1. 1 over 0 this time is undefined. So, we just have to write here undefined. Undefined. Some students would just write U and D and then period. That's fine. Okay. And then for 180 degrees, this point is the point negative 1, 0. Remember, these points are points on the unit circle. Okay. So negative 1 cosine of 180 degrees, 0 sine of 180 degrees. Okay. Take note, we have the equivalent of those angles in degrees in pi radians on this column. Okay? Yan, para hindi natin makalimutan yung association nila. And then 0 for the tangent theta, that's 0 over negative 1. 0 over negative 1 is 0. Okay? And then for 270 degrees, we have this point here. And this is the point 0, negative 1. 0, negative 1. So that means our cosine is 0 and our sine value is negative 1. Negative 1 over 0 will again give us undefined. So this time, shortcutin na lang natin ha. So U and D na lang with a period. Yeah, and that's okay lang. We understand each other there. Okay? Ayun, so those are the basic trigonometric functions, the sine, cosine, tangent. What about the other three? Yan, syempre, hindi naman natin kakalimutan si cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Okay? Yan, so, let's start muna with cosecant. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Okay? So, reciprocal ng sine is 1 over 0. So, this will be undefined. 1 over 0 is undefined. Sad naman. No? And then secant theta is the reciprocal of cosine. So that's 1 over 1. Kaya 1 din. For cotangent, that is 1 over 0, or you can treat this cotangent as cosine over sine. So again, that will be undefined. Okay. And then for the next row, we have for 90 degrees. Yan. So, ano yung reciprocal naman ng 1? For cosecant theta, 1 over 1 is 1. Secant theta is 1 over 0. So, again, this will be undefined. Take note, this repetitive process reinforces the idea that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. And also, we can identify cotangent as cosine over sine. Okay? So again, cotangent is cosine over sine, so that makes it 0. Yan. It will be hard for this cotangent to compute for this in terms of tangent kasi naka-undefined siya. Wala naman tayong 1 over undefined. Okay? But we can identify cotangent as cosine over sine, so we can actually make use of this value, 0 over 1. Okay? Now, let's go to cosecant theta of 180 degrees. Ayan, cosecant of 180 degrees will come from the reciprocal of sine value. So, that will be 1 over 0. That will be undefined. Ayan, so, that is also to say that every time we have a 0 for sine theta, cosecant theta is undefined. Okay? For secant, this is the reciprocal of cosine. So, 1 over negative 1 is also negative 1. For cotangent, that's what? Cosine over sine. So, negative 1 over 0 will be undefined. You notice we have two undefined trigonometric functions for each row. So, that means for each quadrantal angle, we will have two undefined trigonometric functions out of the 6. Okay? Yan. Kaya pag naging isa lang to, that means something is wrong. O di ka tatlo yung undefined mo for a row. That means there's something wrong. Okay? That applies for quadrantal angles only. Okay? And now for this last row, cosecant, the reciprocal of sine, that's negative 1. Secant, reciprocal of cosine, reciprocal of 0 is undefined. Ayun na yung second undefined natin. And then lastly, cotangent is cosine over sine. So, 0 over negative 1 will be what? 0. Ayun. So, that is to complete our 6 trigonometric functions for the positive quadrantal angles. Actually, 0 degrees, pwede natin sabihin 360 degrees para kasi 0 is neither positive nor negative. Same as this one, si 0 here can be equated to 2 pi para maging officially positive na siya na quadrantal angle. Okay? So, ayun. Now, let's look at the negative quadrantal angles naman. So, again, it's always beginning with the point 10, our initial point. So, this is our cosine, 0 degrees pa rin. This is 0. That's sine, 0 degrees. This time, since negative ang ating mga quadrantal angles na i-consider, we are moving in a clockwise direction para negative yung ating mga theta, okay, or angles. Okay? By the way, it's not always theta. It can be any Greek letters, say alpha, beta. Sometimes we also make use of capital letters A and B to denote our angles. Okay? So, for here, what is our theta or angle? It will be from this initial point to here, we have negative 90 degrees. So this 0 here is cosine of negative 90 degrees. Okay. Take note that I'm enclosing it in parentheses so that will be clear that we are referring to a negative angle. Okay. And then the negative 1 for the y coordinate of that is sine of 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees rather. Okay? Tapos move pa ulit tayo on a clockwise direction. This one, negative 1, will be the x, kaya associated with cosine of negative 180 degrees. The y coordinate of that, yung 0, is associated with sine of negative 180 degrees. Okay? And then we move pa rin on a clockwise direction. After negative 180, we have negative 270 degrees. So, si 0 here is associated with cosine of negative 270 degrees. And the 1 here is associated with sine negative 270 degrees. We can go back here, and then this one will be the sine of negative 360 degrees. Yan. And the cosine will be cosine of negative 360 degrees. I again have to enclose this inside a parenthesis to make it officially negative angle. And then this one is also cosine of negative 360, not cosine of minus 360, cosine minus 360. Pwedeng cosine of minus negative 360 degrees. Wag lang cosine minus 360 degrees. Okay, so ayun po. Pwede rin naman tayong in terms of pi radians, yung negative 90 degrees. This is what? Negative pi over 2. Take note, this is the angle negative pi over 2. Tapos the negative 180 is the negative pi. You notice yung cosine of pi and cosine of negative pi are just the same because they are coinciding with the same point. Actually, they are called coterminal angles. Same as the sine of pi and sine of negative pi, they are the same. Kasi nga, yung point na we are referring are just the same. Okay? So, si negative 270 naman, parang sila yung nagpalit ni 90 in. Diba? Kanina siya yung positive 90. So, this is now your negative 3 pi over 2. Yan. So, sa trigo, you might say, may calculator naman to do that. Kaya lang yung pag-establish mo ng mga relationships, pag-analyze mo, pagiging critical mo dun sa mga values, sa mga relationships ng mga equations, that's the skill being polished here. Okay? Ayan, so negative 360 naman, that will be equal to your negative 2 pi. Ayan, so here, may establish mo, yung sine ng 2 pi parang parehas lang ng sine of negative 2 pi. Same as this one, di ba? Yung cosine ng negative 2 pi, parehas lang din ng cosine of negative 2 pi. Negative 2 pi and 2 pi terminal angles. Okay? So again, if you go back to our table of values, for the 0, we can draw our guide here to make it more visual. We start with this point. So that will be the point 1, 0. This is 1, this is 0, and the rest can be defined as 0 over 1, 0. Cosecant will be coming from the reciprocal of this, which is undefined. Okay lang na i-denote to as UND and then period. Wag lang U tapos period. Walang ganon. Okay? So, secant theta naman is 1 over 1. So, that is 1. Cotangent theta is cosine over sine. So, this will be undefined. So, same as the positive quadrantal angles, we have two undefined trigonometric functions for every row. Okay? And then for the negative 90 degrees, we are considering this point here. On the negative y-axis, that is the point 0, negative 1. This is 0. This is negative 1. Okay? So, tangent will be sine over cosine, which is undefined. Again, this reinforces the idea that tangent is equal to sine over cosine, and that plays an important role in our succeeding discussions as well. Cosecant theta, this is equal to the reciprocal of sine, which is also negative 1. Secant theta, reciprocal of cosine, and that will be undefined. And then cotangent is cosine over sine, so that is a 0. Okay? So So, pagdating sa negative 180, this is same as the positive 180. So, again, we are considering this point here. That's negative 1, 0. This is the negative 1. And this is the 0. Okay. For the tangent function, it will be sine over cosine. So, 0 over negative 1 is 0. For cosecant, it's the reciprocal of this. So, it will be undefined. Actually, one may also notice parang nag-alternate lang yung undefined negative 1, undefined negative 1 on this cosecant column. Sa tangent column naman, nag-alternate yung 0, undefined, and 0. By the way, dito pala undefined negative 1, undefined positive 1 later. Okay? Anyway, so, for secant theta, this is the reciprocal of cosine, so negative 1. Okay. Hindi pala siya talaga alternating kasi 1, undefined, negative 1, ayun, alam nyo na yun, okay? And then for cotangent theta, ayan, undefined, 0. You notice this will be undefined para may pattern, di ba? Yan, pero officially, this undefined here came from cosine over sine function, so that's cosine negative 1 over 0. Kaya undefined talaga siya. Okay? And then for negative 270 degrees, which is at this point, that will be 0, 1. This is 0. And this is 1. Okay, so tan theta, di ba sabi ko nga may pattern. Ayun, pagka 0, undefined, 0. So this is undefined. Again, this is officially sine over cosine. Kaya 1 over 0 siya. Undefined. For cosecant, ito pala hindi siya strictly alternating. Okay? Parang pwede nating sabing alternating na undefined number, undefined number. Okay? So, what is the number here? So, reciprocal tayo ng sine. So, reciprocal of 1 is 1. For secant, reciprocal ng cosine, that's undefined. Para din tong alternating na number, undefined, number, undefined, number, undefined. Okay? As long as mga consecutive yung quadrantal angles we're considering, parang increment nila is 90 degrees or negative 90 degrees. So, ang cotangent naman natin, undefined, 0, undefined. Is it really 0? Let's see. This is cosine over sine. So, 0 over 1, it's indeed 0. Okay? So, that's it for the negative quadrantal angle. That's all for today. Happy learning!